question number 2. So, let's see what we got here. The second question. When you were born, when were you born? And what was your childhood like? Oh, wow. When was I born? Well, first of all, I truly believe, I think, this is true for a lot of other teachers. I know Peace Pilgrim felt this way, John of God feels this way, other teachers out there, that birth dates, it's just not important. It really isn't. But, people just get kind of caught up in curiosities, and I think they should look at that. I think when people go online and ask some questions, look for some research about a person, I think sometimes that's coming from hey, there's an accident, let's look while we're driving by, and let's know everything we want to know about somebody. I don't think it's really healthy. So, but I'll still answer as best I can. When was I born? I know online that there's a few different dates that are circulated around. I think most of them are not accurate. Maybe all of them. I don't know, because I don't see them. But from what I've heard, there's different dates floating around. I can tell you this: I celebrate my birthday on November 22nd. I don't actually celebrate, but let me explain that. Historically, when I had children that were young, they would ask when we can celebrate. We picked that day because I love the number, 1122, and their mom was born just within days of that. So we would just celebrate mine with hers at the same time on November 22nd. Okay? Hopefully that answers that little bit. And I have people say to me, oh, I bet I know what sign you are. And I'll say, really, what? Oh, you must be a this. Oh, cool. Or they might say, you must be that, And it's funny because whatever they see me as is what sign they associate or assign to me. It's kind of cool. So somebody says, you must be a Libran because you must be a Scorpio because you must be a Capricorn because and whatever happens to be their perception of me, they assign that date. And I think that's really cool because it actually tells me what they think of me, their perception. I think that you're very intelligent, so you must be this. I'll say, oh yeah, very good. I don't think I say yes per se, but I go along with it because it's their perception, and I think it's beautiful, whatever it happens to be. Even if they think a negative thing, whatever they think, that's their thing. It's not me, So, and then, oh my gosh, what was my childhood like? Long story short, let's see. I remember mostly feeling out of place, a lot as a kid, insecure, shy, and so on. That would be there as a theme as a young kid. But at the same time, there were moments, my dad told me later, he remembers me making claims about past lives. Dad, I was this or that, just when I was little. So those things were somehow leaking through. I can tell you I, used to see fairies and goblins and this and that and other realms and angels, but I wasn't brought up that way. So that, so I won't tell you that that's how it was. I wasn't like just a magical child as a child. I would say it was more of a mix early on, a mix of shyness and insecurity and being in a kind of an intense, harsh household. So it was a little protect yourself more than it was to come out and expand into really blissful consciousness. And then, and I remember, playing games, kids in those days, you'd play cowboys or you'd play this, cowboys and Indians, or you'd play whatever kinds of games. But what I played, it was typically reenactments. I was doing reenactments of scenes, all kinds of scenes from other lifetimes. And I don't know, man. I remember meeting a guy who I knew in elementary school, and I saw him when I was around maybe 40 years old. And God, it was great. Hey, how are you? Good to see you again. And he said, do you remember when we were in elementary school, you used to, kids would say, what do you want to do? And you'd say, and you would reenact scenes, battle scenes from wars or, whatever, and scenes depicting events in life's history. And he said, and it's the weirdest thing. And I used to think, man, this guy is nuts. And this was in elementary school, but he said, but guess what? I went on to be a historian because you used to tell me, don't you remember these things? You were there, So that's kind of cool. But another interesting, I think, unique, I'm trying to share the unique things because there's a lot of blah, in life that we have as kids. But unique things include my dad was a stuntman, I think, pretty well known in terms of what he was doing and that kind of lifestyle, so he had a lot of popular friends and all that. But because of that, he would take me a lot of times before I was in school, he would take me, to the studios and all kinds of places that kids usually didn't hang out. So in Southern California, we'd go to Universal Studios and he would have them activate all the props, the rolling mud rocks, and all these kinds of things, floods and whatever, just for us. We'd be driving around in his car and, having the guys trigger these events. You're supposed to be on the little trams for that, right? But so that was kind of cool. And so I think in those days, before elementary school, I was probably doing okay. A little insecure, but I think I was doing okay. Elementary school hit, and I was told that I was a great student. I could just know answers immediately to things, just know answers, know them immediately. And then they said somewhere, I think it was maybe in second grade, because my dad was trying to find out what's wrong, with Michael, because his studies started dropping. And the teacher just said, to my dad, she said, something weird happened. I was watching Michael in his usual we're doing a test, and answers are just popping through. And she said, and one day I noticed he just flipped the paper over and started drawing, and that was it. We lost him. It's as though Michael's left brain switched to right brain or something. It switched over. I started drawing, coloring, just pictures now all of a sudden instead of details. And somebody once theorized and said, well, it's like you saw that it was so easy to do the details that you could now go into everything, in terms of pictures and imagination, because the other was so simple or easy for you. So that happened. That was a major shift. But I met a lot of, celebrities and boxers and sports people, all kinds of people. It was, kind of unique. But I was told never to talk about it because my brothers weren't to be made jealous. So it was something I kept secret until just a few years ago, as believe it or not, because I didn't have anybody else to talk about it with, and some people would not believe the experiences with Elvis and whoever else. So I just, really never bothered. And when I had recently, I think, a couple friends close enough that I could, that I knew that they would believe me, I started sharing it. I never even told the woman I was married to many years ago about a lot of this, because I just got it programmed, don't talk, so I never did. So all that's kind of unique, and that's the way childhood was in a sense. Moving right along, eventually never got really into sports, never really liked school, ditched class every day. I didn't go anywhere, I just hung out outside. And we had a school that allowed that, believe it or not, high school. So they were very permissive about it. So just go and hang out and wait, because I like people. So when class is over, some of the people come out, hey, how's it going? Chat. I always had a supply of chocolate chip cookies because they supplied those at our cafe at the school. Oh man, they were great, fresh, warm, wow. And cold milk. They would put one in the freezer for me, regularly. And so I'd sit outside and do that all day. Just really didn't do school. And so that affected, in terms of my interest in education. But I do believe there's teachers that know how to teach. When they don't have you just try to memorize data, but rather they explain, they help the mind to understand more fully. And that's how my mind works. I love to understand, which is also how I like to teach, is in a way that people would understand whatever concept I'm teaching. So that was school. And, childhood, I guess you could say we'll end it there at, who knows, around 18. But I played a little bit of soccer, and that was fun. I chose that rather than more aggressive or violent sports, which was to the bane of my life because, my brother and father, they weren't really into that. So they just thought I was, he's just different. He wants his hair a little bit longer. He wants to play soccer. Soccer was fun because once you reached high school, they were the stoners. They were always guys that were half stoned, So I loved the fact that they weren't taking it so seriously, They weren't wearing ties on game day. They were wearing torn T-shirts. So, and with band names, I remember that in the 70s, Boston. So that's it. That's it in a nutshell. I think not digging school, but not knowing what to do, where to go. So I say that part not to bemoan it, but so that people can relate that I didn't really get it. I didn't really dig school. Very few moments did I really go, wow, when it was something spiritual. When a teacher, would teach on spiritual, religion, or anything remotely like it. That really piqued my interest. But there were also teachers that could teach even math in a way that they were excited, but they understood it. They didn't just memorize, they understood how to convey that. And I never took, believe it or not, I never took an English class after, I don't even know, 8th grade, 7th grade, math after 8th grade or so. It was not allowed, but somehow I got away with it because I found ways to cheat, but I just didn't. I got lucky that I got away with it, but I did my best. I avoided those classes. Never took, I think I took science once because you had to, and it just happened that I went. But boy, oh boy, just stayed away from school. But I loved, I loved people. I loved kids and hanging out with kids and talking, and that was cool. So I like people more than data, I guess you could call it. Okay, hopefully that makes some sense.